Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So this week, the NCAA held its annual convention in Music City, Nashville. And the Independent Women's Forum, IWF, announced that it was going to be attending, that there were going to be some protests, protesting the NCAA's reckless decision, reckless policy to allow male athletes to compete against women. They have justified this for the longest time. And then they basically just passed the buck and try to distance themselves from their own policies. But they still allow it, including entering into the locker rooms as schools implement these policies. They have evaded accountability and basically tried to downplay the impact their policies has had on female athletes. They're currently embroiled in a lawsuit, well, multiple lawsuits, but in this particular one, involves up to 16 female athletes across different sports who have all given testimonies about how competing against male athletes affected them, being in a locker room with male athletes and how that affected them. And you know what the NCAA president said recently when it came to the locker room situation? The women can make alternative arrangements and go elsewhere, change somewhere else basically.
NCAA President Charlie Baker was on the Hill a little more than a week ago. He suggested that the onus is on female athletes to use other facilities if they're uncomfortable with a transgender player in their locker room. Listen to what he said.
Yeah, and this...
Why do your guidelines allow biological men into women's locker rooms without the women's consent? Without the women's foreknowledge? Why do you do that?
That's not what our guidelines say.
They do say that. I've got them right here. Your guidelines say that transgender student athletes should be able to use the locker room, shower, and toilet facilities in accordance with their gender identity. And here they are, right here.
And then everybody else should have an opportunity to use other facilities if they wish to do so.
Okay, so the burden's on the women.
We talked to Rhonda Gaines about this last week and her experience with having to get dressed in the same locker room as Leah Thomas, who, when he stripped down, took off his clothes, was a fully intact male with it all hanging out. You were rooming with Blair Fleming without being told about his biological status.
Yeah, and just going back to the video of they're still deciding and saying, if you have an issue with this, you can go find another bathroom to use. And they're going to be allowed to be in here because they identify as a woman. And so we have to allow them in here. And we're going to think about what they need and what they want and what makes them comfortable. Well, they have a whole room of women who are terrified and uncomfortable and having to go somewhere else, that they are given this locker room and have to walk out and find somewhere comfortable elsewhere to change. It's just not right. It's crazy.
Because of this reckless policy, Brooke Slusser was in a situation where she was sharing accommodation and even hotel rooms with a male athlete against her consent and even against her knowledge. So the IWF announced it would be holding a demonstration at the 2025 NCAA convention at the Gaylord Opryland Resort on January 15. The group has rallied for the past 2 years at the NCAA's annual conference. We'll be having a peaceful demonstration, letting leadership know at the NCAA that they need to keep women's sports female, Adriana McLam said.
With the NCAA being in town, Republican State Representative Johnny Garrett sent a letter to NCAA President Charlie Baker about this very topic. Now, their request, which was signed by all 75 members of the Tennessee House Republican Caucus, called on the organization to protect the integrity of women's sports by reversing its, quote, controversial decision to allow male athletes to compete as females. The letter says they're concerned about the risk of serious injury and invasion of privacy for female athletes. They're also using Kentucky swimmer Riley Gaines as an example in their argument. The Sumner County native competed against a transgender athlete on the UPenn squad named Leah Thomas, who went on to become the first openly trans woman champion in the NCAA women's division. On the other side, groups like Athlete Ally are committed to protecting LGBTQ+ rights in sports and society. The organization argues that all student athletes, including those that are transgender, should be able to participate in sports free of discrimination.
That this shouldn't be a Democrat or a Republican issue. This is a Tennessee issue. It should be an American issue because we have a real live person that this affected, and it continues to affect.
We are really focusing on an incredibly small number of actual athletes participating in sports, yet The rhetoric is that they're dominating, they're taking over, they're taking away these spots from, and that's 0.002%. That's less than 10 trans athletes that are so-called dominating sports out of 510,000 athletes in the NCAA.
Yet we're talking about multiple championships, NCAA championships taken from women. We're talking about multiple women being affected by having a male athlete in their locker room. We're talking about multiple records that have been affected. Because of this, the UN reported up to 900 medals have been taken from female athletes, as this is an issue that has affected female athletes across the world, and this has been going on for decades. They love to quote the NCAA president talking about there being 10 transgender athletes competing in NCAA competitions. Think about all the women affected and impacted by those 10 athletes. Think about how many women affected by one. We know how many women who were affected by Leah Thomas. They testified to that very fact. Having Leah Thomas in their locker room, having to compete against Leah Thomas, losing a championship to Leah Thomas. You tell those female athletes that it's just one person. All the players affected because of SJSU's decision to allow male athlete on their team. You tell those female athletes that it's just one person. All the boycotts, the ruined season as a result of having to take a stand against this insanity, not to mention the scholarships that are taken by male athletes that should rightfully go to female athletes, and the stress and worry it has caused many female athletes, including worrying about their scholarships being taken away for simply objecting.
I mean, I can't even imagine schools not wanting to play you, but 5 of them said no.
Right. Yes, so proud of those young women to stand up for what they believe in when they're also being silenced by the Mountain West, and they're holding, their scholarships and things over their head. I think that is amazing. That's what we need. We need everybody to stand up and make sure that this does not continue.
Wait a minute. I have to cut in. They're keeping young women from having scholarships if they talk about this. Isn't that a First Amendment right? I mean, I'm surprised that there hasn't been more legal attraction to the journey that you're on right now. I mean, they can't take away their scholarships because they don't want to play with someone they suspect is a biological male.
That's what they're holding over their heads. And that's why a lot of the teammates on the San Jose State team is afraid to come forward. They're afraid to lose their playing time. They're afraid to lose their scholarship.
Outside the NCAA convention in Nashville, Tennessee, Wednesday, protesters gathered to demand that the collegiate sports governing body ban biological males from competing in women's sports. Inside the Gaylord Opland Resort and Convention Center, protesters wore buttons reading "Equality is not a game" and shirts stating "Women's sports are for women" and "Take back Title IX" at ESPN. The protest was organized by our bodies, our Sports Coalition, and the Independent Women's Forum.
Sex matters. Keep women's sports female. Keep hot dogs out of women's sports. Our bodies, our sports. Save women's sports. NCAA, stop discriminating. Keep women's sports female. Our bodies, our sports.
I can't even believe that it has come to this, that young girls have to protest competing against boys. It's insane. Thankfully, things are turning around now. But I'm so glad to see these young women come out and stand up for women's sports. And thank goodness for these organisations as well that are supporting them. Victoria Coley said that this is just based on fairness, returning the integrity of women's sports and making sure that the NCAA does what's right. I don't know how much pressure needs to be put on the NCAA for them to do what is right. We had the NAIA change their policy a while back now, but I think they're digging their heels in because they don't want to admit that they were wrong. The former University of Nevada women's volleyball co-captain and Independent Women's Forum ambassador, Sia Li'i, said she was there to demand that the NCAA change their policies that discriminate on women on the basis of sex. She said that she's there to make sure that no other female athletes have to go through what she went through, what her teammates went through.
If you had to give any advice to any young female athletes that are aspiring to be in your shoes and play at the Division I level or any college level, what would you give them? Keep working hard, keep
being you and just know that there are people in the background fighting so that you can be in the position we're in. I mean, I love volleyball and I'm so grateful and blessed to be in the position I am. And I hope that one day women can dominate the sport just like we once did.
Sports have done so much for me in my life.
Sia Li'i has been an athlete most of her life. Now she plays volleyball for the University of Nevada at Reno. Li'i was one of many athletes taking part in the Independent Women's Forum demonstrations outside the NCAA convention at Gaylord Opryland Wednesday. The purpose, to advocate for the NCAA to change their policy toward transgender students competing in sports.
Here today to demonstrate that sports are for women only and that males have no place in women's sports.
According to the NCAA website, the policy takes a sport-by-sport approach similar to the Olympics. Transgender students are allowed to take part, but it requires testosterone level testing within a limited amount of time before a competition. That's something transgender athlete Darren Johnson knows about.
I have to have testosterone results within 90 days of any competition that I want to take part in.
Johnson is Davidson County's co-chair of the Tennessee Equality Project. She's worried this type of policy change will be the tip of the iceberg.
Bans on trans athletes were really the first foray into then making bathroom access more difficult, making healthcare access more difficult.
But many recent grads, including Macy Petty, are worried about the advantage transgender athletes bring to their sports.
Played volleyball, men's nets were over 7 inches higher than female nets. That shows, reflected in our sports, that we are biologically different, and to protect the integrity of sports, the safety and the fairness of sports, we must keep them separated based on biology, not feelings.
I'm sorry, but no young girl should be in the locker room with the likes of that person there who was talking about having access to bathrooms and access to healthcare or whatever. Girls deserve better than being put in the locker room with men, with boys, and being told that if they object, they are bigots. That if they object, they should seek counselling. That is unacceptable, and the NCAA president knows this. He knows. They were just trying to, be inclusive and to give themselves a pat on the back about how inclusive they are, and they didn't think about the consequences. So Charlie Baker, the NCAA president, told reporters on Tuesday, "We do have a situation where there is no clarity on this from a legal point of view. We have federal judges ruling on individual cases. We have 27 states with one set of rules and a bunch of other states with a whole other set of rules. I do think we would welcome clarity somewhere on this, so everyone has a general understanding of what the rules of the game are." So he's playing dumb, in my opinion. He is playing dumb. He knows exactly what the rules should be. It's very straightforward. If you are male, you do not belong in a women's locker room, and you do not belong in women's sports, in women's NCAA, volleyball, basketball, swimming, none of that. We know that sports has categories. The rules have been set from the very beginning. As soon as women were allowed to have their own categories, because at one point women weren't even included. As soon as we had our own categories, we had our own categories. And that was free from male athletes. It's very simple. How about just doing the right thing? How about protecting women and girls? How about restoring order? How about ensuring the integrity of the women's division, restoring the integrity and fairness and safety of the women's division? He should just do the right thing or just keep quiet. But thankfully, the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act has passed in the House, and hopefully it will pass in the Senate, or Trump will just write an executive order and put an end to this once and for all. And that's what he said he was going to do. So we're hopeful, even if the NCAA president is unhelpful, to say the least. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Like, comment and subscribe. Take care of yourselves, and God willing, I will see you in the next video.